Sometimes I just can't help myself, and I found this piece on Facebook Marketplace. It's horribly painted, but you never know what you're going to find under paint. So sometimes you're pleasantly surprised and sometimes you're horrified. But I found a Basset set. I'm going to do the upright one today, and we're going to see what is underneath this paint. For this project, I picked up Green Ease. This is a non-toxic furniture stripper. I have a few favorites that I like. This is one of them. It has a very satisfying way of when you're putting it over paint, it bubbles it up. And so I'm going to try it on this one and see how it does, because you just never know. Again, what am I going to find underneath it? My biggest concern is that there's laminate on the top. So let's strip it and find out what we have. The paint job actually is not horrible. You can tell there is some overspray, but honestly not as bad as some of them I've seen. I do have a Maker's Mark, which is great. So it's a Basset. All of the drawers work really well. It's very clean besides some of the overspray. So 4 drawers, very clean. I'm just going to need to strip it and see. The top is probably the worst, but I don't see any major veneer damage. So I'm going to use Green Ease. I'll decant it into a little container, and then I'm just going to brush it on. Now with non-toxic strippers, you have to leave them a little bit longer. And so I'm going to apply it and let it set for about an hour, and then I'll test it and see if it's ready. While it's doing its thing, if I have any dry areas, I'm going to come back and just reapply a second coat to make sure that I have full coverage on my stripper. After about an hour and a half, I came back to test it because I could tell that it was bubbled up. I'm using a putty knife. You can see it easily got off the paint, but it's not taking off the finish underneath. So I have the layer of paint, then I have the top coat, and then I have the finish. And so I've got to get down to raw. So I'm going to pull out my carbide scraper, and that's going to help me get down to raw. After I scrape that entire finish, then I'll come back with some acetone. I'll start with paper towels, get off the residue, then I'll go in with a double aught 20 steel wool, and I'll try to get off as much of the finish as I can. These little areas are really important to try to get any of that finish off because they are very difficult to sand. So I try to go in with my carbide scraper, and I've got the acetone, I've got the steel wool, and I'm just getting off that finish. This will allow me to be able to not have to do as much sanding later on. So it was probably a telltale sign, since I had no bubbling on the top, that it is not real wood. It is laminate. So that's a little disappointing. Obviously, it's in perfect condition, but it is laminate. I'll do the same process on the drawers. I'll use my carbide scraper, get off as much of that paint, then I'll go down and get the rest of the finish off. Clean it off with acetone, come in with my steel wool, my 2-aught steel wool, and try to just get off as much of the overspray, because I had some areas on the sides that had paint. So at this point, I'm going to try to get off as much of the paint as I can. And then if I have more later, I'll continue with the acetone, and sanding will help get some of that off as well. I would normally not leave the drawers in when I'm stripping a piece, but normally with this stripper, I get a really satisfying bubbled up on all of my paint removal. So it was really more of a wow factor that I thought, oh, I'm going to get a really good shot. And honestly, it didn't. It didn't bubble up nearly as much as I was hoping. So that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and continue to use the stripper on the inside. These are the areas that I didn't quite reach. I'll use my Festool sander on 80 grit, and I'm going to do my really first rough sand on 80 grit. So I'll go over the whole piece, and then I'll come back and do hand sanding, because it's once that 80 grit and all the finishes off, it goes really fast. So I go back with 80 grit real quick just to make sure I don't have any swirl marks. Then I'll go to 120, and then I'll finish at 180, and then I'm ready to kind of inspect it and see if I have any other problems. I had some weeping on the finish, so that does sometimes happen when you're trying to strip a piece. So it seems like I can use the denatured alcohol and put that over it, and that will kind of draw out any extra finish that might be weeping out of the pores of the wood. And when I put that on, it revealed a lot of paint that was stuck down in the wood grain. So I'm going to use some acetone with a wire brush and go over any areas that I see that still have paint stuck in the wood grain. So the legs are wobbly, and I took a screw out in the back. That's all that I saw, and I twisted it and tried to get it out, but I couldn't get them out, because I also think it'd be so much easier to finish these if I could access this area right here. So I put it out on my Instagram, and Chris from Optimum Modern said that he's refinished lots of these, and it's a mortise and tendon joint. And he said, once I remove the screw, I should be able to just wiggle it and it'll come out. So I'm hoping that will work. We'll try it. There it is. Success. Since all the glue was gone, I'm going to make sure that I really apply it liberally, put some fresh wood glue all over it. Then I'll line up the screw hole, put it back in, screw it in, clamp it up, and let it set. Now I'm going to work on staining. I have everything sanded down through the 180 grit, and I'm going to make my final clean it off. I like to clean it with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water, and I'm going to try a new product to me. This is General Finishes Hard Wax Oil. They have it in clear, they have it in a different couple colors, so I've decided to just experiment. I'm mixing 10-part clear to 2 parts of the brown, and I'm going to see if that'll give me a little bit deeper tone because the legs are a little bit lighter wood than the rest of the body. So the directions for this product is you just simply apply it, you let it wait for 5 minutes, and then you wipe off the excess. They said if you want to do a second coat, you can, but you need to wait 24 hours. So again, this is the first time I've used this. Normally I use Osmo's hard wax oil, but this is the first time I have tried General Finishes. So I'm going to see if I like it. For the side, I set it flat, so I decided to just simply pour it on, and I'm going to wipe it around the surface with a Bondo spreader. It makes it a lot easier. It actually, I think, uses less product and helps it really get into the grain. You can see how much it kind of looks kind of gray green, but when you start spreading it around, it really made that wood grain pop. So I have a little area on one of the front sides that I'm going to fill in with some wood epoxy. This is Mohawk's brand of their epoxy stick. They carry it in different colors. So it's a 2-part system. You just pull off what you want and then you knead it together until it's a uniform color and then you apply it. When it's dry, you can sand it back and then continue with the refinishing process. For the drawers, I do the exact same process. I'm going to start with 80 grit. You can see I don't really have a lot of finish left on these. So I'm just going to start by hand sanding. I could use my sander, yes, but these are straight, these are flat, and it's going to just go really easy and quick if I use my sanding block. So I start with 80, go up to 120, and then stop at 180. So I've decided to try to re-veneer the top. Now I've had some problems with veneering before. I had a total fail on veneer before, so I'm always a little hesitant doing it. But this is Sawyer's. I picked it up at Woodcraft. This is their 10 mil paper-backed veneer. So according to their directions, it's just to apply it with wood glue, and you apply it to both sides. You set it, clamp it down, let it dry overnight, and you should be good to go. We'll see. So I think maybe I'm veneer deficient. Keep in mind, this could have been edited out, but I'm going to share it with you because it failed. I came out this morning, pulled everything off, and it's all bubbled. So I don't know, I had some other problems with veneer before. This is a paperback veneer. When I reached out to the veneer company, they recommended using either Titebond 2 or 3. So I don't know. I think because I'm going over laminate, I think I need to use contact cement. And so I'm going to double check with the veneer company just to see what they think on the adhesion. I used a block to kind of push it down, but I think I need to get one of those, I think it's called like a J roller, to really press it down. It could have also been something to do with the temperature. It's like 6 degrees here. I did leave it in the garage overnight. So I think what I'm gonna do is switch my adhesive, glue it down, probably take it inside overnight and see if that will help, because the really cold temperatures, I'm sure, is not helping it either. So anyway, take two. So I reached out to the veneer company, and Larry Sauer II called me and discussed my problem. So he said my main culprit was temperature. It needs to be 65 degrees for the glue to cure. So I asked him, I said, should I be using contact cement since I'm going over laminate? He said, absolutely not. He said, we recommend Type Bond 2 or 3. If you use contact cement, he said, it will delaminate. He said, it might be 6 months, it could be 6 years, but it will delaminate. Don't use it. So I was like, all right. So I brought it inside, did the same procedure. It was kind of buckling. So I watched a few more YouTube videos, and somebody was applying a little bit of water and then ironing it. So I could tell it wasn't going to go flat. So I thought, well, I'm going to try the iron after about 30 minutes, and I'm trying to really get out any of the buckles. And I got it really pretty smooth. And here it was the following morning. It's not 100% perfect. I am going to iron it a little bit more, but I'm going to trim up all of the excess first. I just flipped it over, put it on a board, and I'm trimming the excess with an X-Acto knife. Yes, I think a router would be easier, but I don't have a router. It is on my plan to get one at some point, but for right now, this works. Then I'll use some sandpaper to refine that edge. So now I'm going to go back to the body. I have some areas on the side that this is a different kind of wood. So I'll use some gel stain and see if I can get it to match the sides. I'll probably have to tone it, but I'm going to start with gel stain and see if that will get me a little bit closer. Since this is a different color, I adjusted my ratio. I'm doing a 10-to-1 mixture of the clear wax to the brown wax. So after my second coat, I had some like hazing on the sides. I've never had this with Osmo, but it did mention in the directions that you could do some buffing. So I had purchased these to use with it when I was going to do my dining room table. So I grabbed it, and it's just a non-woven pad, and I started just kind of buffing it out in circular motions, and that got rid of all of that hazing. For the frame that was a different type of color, I'm going to use Mohawk's toner and just kind of blend that in. So it's just very light coats. And then if I need to come back later, I can do some additional touch-ups. The last step is I'm going to give a really good clean to the interior of the drawers. If I have any additional overspray, I'll make sure I sand that off as well. And then I'm going to condition the drawers with some Danish oil. When I was taking my pictures, I noticed one little area that still had a tiny little bit of paint on it. So I have these furniture markers, and I'm just going to color over it, and that just blends it right in. Well, let's look back at the before. You know, you sometimes just never know what you're going to get with a painted piece. I was cautiously optimistic that I might find something fabulous underneath it. And I did. You know, the sides and the drawers were beautiful. Sadly, the top was laminate, but sometimes you just never know. Sometimes the paint can actually protect the finish from veneer damage. So sometimes you do have really great results underneath. But after stripping it completely, sanding through the grits, doing the new veneer on top, here is the finished product. What do you think? Looks pretty good, doesn't it? I think it looks great. This hard wax oil is a little duller in some areas. Now the buffing did help kind of get a little bit of shine on the side. I only ended up needing to do one coat on the drawers. It was beautiful, had no problems on it. I did leave those legs natural. Now, do you think I should go ahead and tone them with a little bit darker color? I wasn't sure, but here's the drawers before. Obviously red, all of that overspray, but here it is after. it's kind of nice to see, right, before and after. It was a lot of work to get it to that point, but man, beautiful. The drawers are just perfect condition. Beautiful veneer. I think the top turned out pretty good. I had a lot of problems with it, mainly the temperature. But next time, because I have the low boy, I'm going to try peel and stick and see if it goes any smoother. But I'm not sure if it will or not. But I sure hope so. So enjoy some of these videos and I'll come back at the end. So what do you think overall? Are you a fan of this one? It's pretty cool. I do love it. It's a classic style. I do love mid-century modern. I am glad I went ahead and it was an investment, but I'm glad I went ahead and put the wood top on it. I think it'll sell better. Okay, just kidding. I think they need to be toned. So I'm going to put some brown mahogany gel stain over it. Since it's oil-based always plays nice together. So I'll put some of the gel stain on it, and then tomorrow morning I will seal it, and I think it looks so much better. Definitely needed it. Needed a little bit darker tone. I sometimes like two-tone, but this needed to all blend together. So I love it. Tell me what you think in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.